everyone! Welcome to chapter 2 of my stamp school series, where we are going to create simple wax seals with basic supplies. These are the common items most beginners start this craft with. We've got the wax stamp, the spoon, sealing wax, and not forgetting the candle. Now, there are more supplies that you can get to make the process easier and the end results more extravagant, and I will be making videos on how to do that as we progress along the series. But for today, we will be focusing on just the basic supplies. First, let's take a look at the wax stamp. This is a basic stamp with a wooden handle and a round stem head. So the stamp head is actually detachable. You can easily separate them by unscrewing it. So what you can do is, if you don't want to get a bunch of handles, you can just get one and get a variety of different stamp heads and just use them interchangeably. These round stamp heads, they usually come in two sizes. They're typically either 25 mm or 30 mm in diameter, and the size sometimes depends on the intricacy of the design. So designs with finer or tinier details will show up better on larger stamp heads, and they will usually make them on 30 mm stamp heads. The larger stamp head would naturally use more wax when you are making the wax seal, and the smaller one would use less. Next, we are moving on to the spoon. As I mentioned in chapter 1, it is good to get one with some depth. Now, this is another commonly seen spoon type. It is not as deep, but it's wider so it can hold the sealing wax without overflowing, and that's important. It is also good to have one with a spout over here. It's not necessary to have it, but it helps facilitate the pouring of your wax, giving you more control over the speed and direction of the wax flow. Now, this would definitely be helpful if you're a beginner still trying to figure out how everything works. Moving on, we've got the wax stick and wax beads. Now, these are octagon-shaped beads. There are many other shapes and sizes out there, and the number of beads you'll need will depend on the size of the wax beads and the size of your stamp head. Now we move on to the demonstration. First, we're going to light the candle. I like to put my candle on the coaster in case I need to move it when it's lit, so that I don't accidentally hurt myself or cause any spills. Ready your stamp and wax. I will be using the 25 mm stamp head and also this pastel purple wax stick later on that's already been used. Typically, when I make my wax seals, I would pour the wax over my quartz coaster so I can peel it off afterwards. And this is because unless I am pouring the wax over an envelope to properly seal it, for other projects, if I want to make wax seals in advance so I can use them in the future, or just for, creativity's sake, I will pour them over coasters like these so that, if I make a mistake, I can just peel it off, remelt the wax, and recreate the seal so that none of this wax goes to waste. But since we are talking basic supplies today, I will be using this release paper instead of the coaster that I have. This is paper that you can get from stickers. After you peel off your sticker, you're left with this glossy surfaced release paper, and I've found that they work pretty well with wax seals if you want to peel them off after the wax has hardened. I will be demonstrating the wax beads first, and since this spoon I want to use is relatively clean, there's not a lot of wax that was left over from my previous use. I will be using 5 wax beads for the seal. Okay, so now this is important to take note of when you are starting off. Some of the wax do tend to cling onto the spoon when you pour it out, and so when the spoon is clean or clean-ish in my case, I like to use one additional wax bead so that when I pour it out, I get enough. So typically a 25 mm stamp head requires about 4 of these octagon wax beads, but because some of the wax will stay on the spoon, I will be using 5. And if I want to create another wax seal after this, I will use 4 because there's already wax stuck to the spoon, and 4 is gonna be enough. If I use 5, it's gonna be too much, and the wax seal is going to turn out extra big. We're going back to basics today. No fancy furnace, just spoon, candle, and the wax in the spoon. One thing to take note that you can't really see from this angle, but see, this is why it's good to have a coaster under your candle. If you look at the flame and the spoon, now the spoon is touching the flame. We don't want that, because if your spoon is too close to the flame, yes, it does get hot faster, but it also dirties your spoon. It burns your spoon. But more importantly, the wax at the bottom of the spoon that is directly in touch with the flame, it will start to boil. And when your wax boils, it can create bubbles that can stay in your wax seal. They don't pop, and sometimes that's just not the effect that you want. Because this is a new candle and the wick is still burning strong and it's hotter. Some people like to cut the wick to make it shorter so the flame isn't wildly big. I don't mind it. Sometimes I prefer it because I want the wax to melt faster. But if you don't want the wax to melt as quickly to prevent bubbles, trim the wick of the candle and it will melt slower because the flame would be smaller. Okay, it's melted now. Can you see? It's melted. If we wait too long, the wax is gonna harden. Like it boiled a little bit. You can see like tiny little bubbles. That's fine. Just pour it onto the release paper. Ooh, see? When I touch the flame, that's what happened with my spoon. I'll talk about it later. That's not important. And then you're gonna put the stamp into the wax. Okay, while that dries, I'm gonna blow out the candle, safety reasons, and talk about this. Look at this. Oh, the wax is still hot, so it's still melted. It's still flowing. You can, if you want to clean the spoon, you can do it now while the wax is still, flowy. Because once it's dry, it will be harder to clean. Well, it's almost impossible. The way to clean these spoons would be to melt the wax and wipe it off with tissue. Let's talk about this. If you don't care about what your spoon looks like because it's already, you like the used look. If you like the used look, let me just wipe off this wax really quickly before it dries up. The part here. Keep your spout clean. That's important. The bottom, it got wiped off too, so let's just clean it. It's dirty enough for me to make my point anyway. The spoon is burned. But this was a clearance spoon anyway. I didn't get it like 100% clean. You can see that it's rusty in some places. I don't mind it. So the reason why you don't want to burn your spoon is not because of aesthetics. It can be because of aesthetics. But for me personally, when there's a layer of soot under your spoon, it can get into your wax seal when you pour, depending on where the soot forms. So you don't want that. That's why you don't burn your spoon. You try not to get soot on your spoon, and if there is, wipe it off immediately if it's too close, if you know that the soot is gonna fall in. Otherwise, there's gonna be soot pieces in your wax seal and it's gonna not destroy, because you can always melt it again and redo it. But if you got a perfect marble piece, you don't necessarily want to do that. And it's sad when there's a piece of soot in it. Okay. See how easily it peeled off? Release paper. It's an easy hack if you don't want to get a coaster, but you can see that it doesn't end up round. And if you look at this is interesting. I did not plan for this. You can see the imprint of the wax stamp design through the wax seal. And this is because the wax flowed outwards, particularly in this triangular direction on this paper, because paper is really thin, and when it gets in contact with heat, it crinkles. That's why the wax flows out and out and out. It crinkles. You get this shape, random shape. It's not always gonna look like that. It really depends on your paper, the way, you know, how flat it is, that kind of stuff. I will go more in depth into it in the coaster video. I want to keep this video mainly focused on basic wax seals, but hey, teaching moment, learnable moment. I might use this clip again for the coaster video with just a different voiceover. Let's peel it off. Pretty. And look what happens if you let your wax boil. My wax boiled a little bit, but maybe this was the result of like the bottom, when I put the spoon too close to the candle. The wax on the bottom, it boiled. I couldn't see the bubbles on the top, but bubbles are there. Or maybe air bubbles got trapped, you know, when I poured it. But yeah, this is what happens. It gets trapped and it forms these patterns on your wax seal. So if this is not the look that you're going for with the swirls, make sure your wax doesn't go boiling. But if it does, a very simple way to get rid of the bubbles is to stir your wax. Get it off the heat source and stir the wax, and the bubbles will be gone. Next, we are going to work with a wax stick. I don't like working with a wax stick because it's not as easy. It's not as easy to work with a wax stick. There are two ways that I've tried. You can either melt the wax stick on the spoon itself, lift it when you get enough wax in the spoon, make your seal, or cut it. I personally don't like cutting wax sticks. It's really tough. It's really thick. It hurts! I'll show you. These are craft scissors that are ruined because everybody just kept taking it and using them to cut weird things. So it's no longer as sharp as it should be, but just look at it. It's hard. It's very tough. So I wasn't able to cut through it. Well, I probably could have, but I prefer doing it like that. It's easier. And you know what the crappy thing is? This isn't enough wax. Why did I cut such a small piece? Hopefully there's enough leftover wax on this spoon to compensate for this tiny little bob that I cut off. Should have done a bigger piece. Okay. This spoon doesn't have a spout. See? I just noticed. Okay. Same thing. Light the candle. And Place the spoon over the flame, but not too close. So times like these really make you appreciate the furnace, because with the furnace you don't have to hold the spoon over the flame. It's not taking a long time, but I'm stuck here. I cannot just walk away. You shouldn't walk away, actually. That's very dangerous with a lit candle. But like, I cannot multitask, you know? Check messages. This motion doesn't do much, but it still, you know, it gets the wax in the spoon flowing, so you're not heating just the bottom part, right? You're almost stirring the wax. You can stir the wax with a toothpick if you want, but if you're going for a marble design, you may not want to do that. Okay, so previously I used the release paper, and I briefly explained how different it is from using a coaster. So maybe this time I'll pour the wax onto a coaster so you can see in this video how the different wax seals turn out. But for a more in-depth explanation, I think it's still better to watch the coaster video, because there are still a lot of different types of coasters that you can get, and the maintenance, the usage, the effect, it's just all different. You wouldn't think that it's gonna make that much of a difference if you haven't tried it, but wow. Okay, let's pour it on my coaster. This is quartz. Oh great, there was enough leftover wax. See, no soot. My spoon is just dirty. And pop it on. You can already see the difference, right? Let me blow out the candle first. You can already see the difference here. The wax stopped flowing in, you know, the different whatever directions you want it to go, and instead it stayed the round puddle that I was pouring the wax in. Because this is solid, it doesn't crinkle. Some people prefer these, which is fine too. It's all down to personal preferences what kind of wax seals you make. It stays in shape. And you can already see it is not as translucent as this piece that was done on the paper. Yeah. You can see the shadow moving across this first wax seal that I made. Oops. Now I'm just gonna quickly show you how to melt the wax directly on the spoon, and this chapter will be done. You need 2 hands for this, which is not the most fun. I was already complaining earlier about having 1 hand. Only 1 hand free. Now both hands are gonna be occupied this entire time. Okay, so you've got your spoon over your flame, not too close. It looks like I'm touching the flame from this angle, but it's not. But I have to put it in this angle so you can see what's going on the top. And then you have your wax stick and you just hold it. But this method, the thing about this method that I noticed is it's more difficult for you to estimate how much wax you have, because physics. You have your wax stick in your spoon, it's melting. Let's say you put ice in your water and the water level rises. This is the same thing. You're putting your wax stick in the spoon and it looks like you have more wax than you have. Like if I lift it, it looked like it had like half a spoonful, see? But when I lift it, No, it's more like a quarter. And the wax sticks to the spoon, the melted wax. My screen got darker for a moment there. I'm not sure what's going on. Let's see if I can fix it. No, I couldn't fix it. But I seem to have enough wax now. This comes with experience, or, you know, guess and check. I like to do this on the edge. Scrape off whatever, you know, just a bit of wax. And yeah, it looks like a good amount. Let's pour it on the release paper now. Pour it. Oops. You see how the wax flows a little bit? Look at it, it's got like an ovally shape. This part's my fault, but it's not as round as the coaster thing. And you see when you press the wax down, it doesn't hold the round shape. It follows the crinkles of the paper, the valleys and gorges that you formed with the heat. Again, this part's my fault. It's gonna peel off very nicely from the release paper. And ta-da! It's also a bit translucent, as you can see, but it's not as, maybe it's just the color. Or maybe this wax wasn't as hot as this one. That's why it didn't flow as much. And you can't see through this wax seal as much as this one, because this one really just went out there. But for this one, most of the wax still stayed, you know, concentrated on where you put the stamp. But if you compare it with the seal that we made earlier with the coaster, look at the shape. If you want a regular shaped wax seal, then use a coaster. But if you don't, you prefer irregular shaped ones, release paper is the way to go. Or certain silicone coasters. But I'll talk about that next time. This video is getting really long. It's gonna be a nightmare to edit. Okay. In chapter 3, I will be talking about the different types of sealing wax that you can get and how they are used. So do stay tuned if you're interested in that. I hope that today's video has been helpful, and now you know how to make simple wax seals with basic stamp supplies. And what are the basic stamp supplies? Spoon, stamp, and wax. Boop. There we go. And of course, your heat source, candle. Very important. This video wouldn't have been possible without the candle. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. Thank you for watching my video, and if you liked it, please do give it a thumbs up. It really motivates me to keep working on this series. If you have any questions about wax stamping or wax seals in general, feel free to leave a comment. If it's simple enough, I will just reply it in the comment. But if it requires more, you know, elaborations, I will do my best to include it in following videos. Please subscribe to stay updated, and as always, happy stamping!